My parents gave my savings to my sister while I covered all bills, so I bought my own house and never looked back at them. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for most of my life, I've been the responsible son who keeps everything together. I've always believed that taking care of my family was just part of who I am. Paying bills, covering rent, managing groceries, making sure the lights stayed on, those were my duties. I worked a stable job, clocking in hours that most of my friends would complain about, but I never minded. It felt good to know my parents weren't stressing over every little thing, to know that someone had to be the adult. My friends would joke, "You're too generous, man, they're using you," and I'd laugh it off. "It's my family," I'd say. Loyalty mattered more than anything else. Mom would often pat my shoulder and say, "You're such a responsible boy, I don't know what we'd do without you," while Dad nodded with that proud grin of his. Those small praises built me up, gave me a sense of purpose. I didn't mind sacrificing my weekends or skipping nights out. It wasn't about recognition, it was about keeping the house afloat. And for a while, it felt like a good balance. Then there was Emma, my younger sister. She had this way of asking for things as if it were no big deal. "Hey, can you cover my Uber tonight? Or I'm short a few bucks for lunch, can you spot me?" At first, I didn't think much of it. She was my sister. A couple of small favors weren't going to hurt anyone. But the frequency started to bother me, and I caught myself hesitating before saying yes. Even as I handed her the money, I felt this tiny prick of unease, a whisper that something wasn't entirely fair. I shook it off, telling myself I was overthinking. Still, at the back of my mind, a question lingered: was I being too generous, or was the system in this house quietly stacked against me? Emma had this effortless way of getting what she wanted, and I started noticing it more and more. While I was crunching numbers, paying bills, and making sure the fridge wasn't empty, she seemed to float through life without consequence. "I don't get why you stress so much," she'd say casually while scrolling on her phone, one hand flicking at her hair. I'd bite my tongue, forcing a laugh, telling myself she didn't mean anything by it. But deep down, it stung. Everything I did felt invisible, and everything she did was praised. Mom would gush over how clever she was, how talented, how she always had the perfect idea, the perfect outfit, the perfect friends. Dad would nod, smiling proudly, while I balanced the grocery bills and tried not to flinch at the unfairness. My friends would hint, "Man, she's using you," and I'd nod, half defensive, half annoyed. I wanted to believe that my sacrifices mattered, that someone noticed. But the truth was starting to sink in: no one seemed to see me at all. One night, I overheard Emma asking Mom for money she didn't even need. She wanted a new pair of shoes, expensive ones, and Mom agreed without a second thought. The casual way she got everything she wanted made my stomach twist. I kept my distance and focused on my own responsibilities, but resentment started creeping in. How was it fair that I was constantly giving, while she walked away with everything? Even small moments of kindness on my part went unnoticed. I'd drive her to school or pick up something she forgot, and she'd barely say thanks. The imbalance became glaring. I felt like a ghost in my own house, keeping everything running while she got the spotlight. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd been wrong all along to put family first. Was loyalty supposed to feel this heavy, like I was drowning while everyone else floated? The thought settled in my chest like a stone, and I realized something was quietly, dangerously off. I've always been careful with money. Ever since I got my first paycheck at 18, I saved relentlessly, little by little, a safety net for emergencies or maybe, one day, a place I could truly call my own. I pictured it often: my own apartment, my own rules, my own peace. But one evening, I overheard something that made my chest tighten. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen, whispering. "Emma's college fund is going to be perfect, thanks to the savings we set aside," Mom said. My heart sank. My savings. The money I had painstakingly put aside for myself. And they were giving it to Emma. I froze in the hallway, trying to process it. My mind raced. Did they think I wouldn't notice? Had I really been invisible for this long? I walked into the kitchen, forcing a calm tone. "Wait, what do you mean by my savings?" I asked, trying not to sound accusatory. Mom smiled, a little too sweetly. "We know what's best for the family. You've done so much already, we thought this would help Emma get ahead. I felt a knot in my stomach tighten, and my hands shook slightly. All those late nights, all the extra shifts, all the times I covered rent or paid for groceries while Emma spent freely gone unnoticed. And now, my future, my independence, had been handed over without a word. I tried to speak up, to argue, but Dad interrupted. We're doing this for the family. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. Those words cut deeper than any argument ever could. I left the kitchen, my vision blurred, the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I spent the night staring at my bank statements, counting my money, imagining what I could have done with it. The unfairness wasn't just financial, it was emotional. I realized that loyalty had limits, and mine had been tested and broken. Somewhere, beneath the anger and disbelief, a fire began to grow. The worst part? I had no idea how I was going to get it back. By this point, I felt like I was carrying the house on my shoulders. Every bill, every emergency, every little problem, it fell to me. Rent, utilities, groceries, car repairs, I handled it all without complaint. But the unfairness of the situation was starting to eat at me. I'd watch Emma complain about wanting something new or ask for money, and my stomach would not. I wanted to scream that I was drowning here, that I had limits, but every time I opened my mouth, guilt and duty kept me quiet. Mom would casually comment, "You've done so much, it's a lot to ask," as if a simple pat on the back would erase years of sacrifice. Dad would nod, and the room would fill with this quiet expectation that I keep going. I started noticing how small mistakes I made, forgetting to restock something, missing a bill deadline by a day, were met with sighs or sharp remarks. Meanwhile, Emma could do whatever she wanted, and the same parents would laugh and praise her ingenuity. Even friends noticed the weight I carried. "You're too good to them," they'd say, shaking their heads. I knew they were right, but telling the truth would have made me feel selfish. I justified it to myself, this was family, loyalty mattered, I was supposed to do this. But the constant drain was wearing me down. Nights spent crunching numbers or making extra trips to cover someone else's mistakes left me exhausted. I began noticing the resentment bubbling beneath my calm exterior, a tight, angry ball that refused to let me rest. And somewhere in the middle of all this, a thought started to form. What if all this effort, all this sacrifice, wasn't being respected at all? What if I was just a tool for everyone else's comfort while my own future was ignored? The more I thought about it, the heavier the weight became and the harder it became to imagine continuing like this. It wasn't just the money anymore. Every little interaction started to feel like a reminder that Emma was the favored one, the golden child, and I was invisible. Holidays, birthdays, even casual dinners became exercises in comparison. Mom would fawn over Emma's choices, her outfits, her creative ideas, while I quietly set the table or cleaned up afterward. Dad would laugh at her jokes, brush off her mistakes, and praise her charm, while I felt like I had to earn every ounce of acknowledgement. Even small gifts highlighted the imbalance. Emma would get new gadgets, clothes, or tickets to events she barely deserved. Meanwhile, I would get a pat on the back, a quiet, "Thanks for helping," barely registering as thanks at all. Friends started pointing it out more often. "They treat you like you're their ATM," one of them said bluntly. I forced a laugh, but deep down, I knew it was true. Emma had this way of manipulating moments to make herself shine. If she got a B on a project, Mom would say, "Oh, that's amazing, you worked so hard." Meanwhile, if I got an A, it was, "Well, you should have gotten an A+." The constant comparison knotted me, but I kept my mouth shut, telling myself I was strong enough to handle it. I started documenting little moments in my head, the times I paid for groceries, covered late fees, or fixed problems no one else noticed. Each memory felt like a ledger of my sacrifices, a tally of what I gave versus what I received in return. And every time I added to it, my chest tightened. By the end of that week, I felt a growing resentment I hadn't let surface before. I realized the family system I had believed in for years was quietly working against me. And the more I saw, the more I wondered, how long could I keep giving without finally breaking? It all came to a head one Saturday evening. The water heater broke, the fridge was on the fritz, and somehow, I was the only one who seemed capable of fixing everything. I drained my savings to cover the repairs while Emma lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone, complaining about being bored and hungry. I snapped. I don't even remember what I said at first, just words spilling out in frustration. I can't keep doing everything for everyone. When do I get a break? When do I matter? My voice cracked halfway through, and for a second, the house went silent. Mom's expression hardened. We've raised you to be responsible. You're overreacting. You should be grateful for what you have. Dad chimed in with a sigh, Emma's future matters too. Don't be selfish. I felt my chest tighten so hard I thought I might pass out. I had spent years sacrificing, staying calm, holding everything together, and here it was, treated like my loyalty meant nothing. Emma, of course, looked annoyed, not at herself, but at me. Why are you yelling? Calm down, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. That's when it hit me. All the money I'd saved, all the bills I'd covered, all the times I'd put myself last, none of it mattered to them. None of it. I retreated to my room, slammed the door, and sank onto my bed. For the first time in years, I let myself feel the full weight of betrayal, exhaustion, and anger. My stomach twisted, my hands shook, and I realized just how much resentment had been simmering under the surface. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about my life, my sacrifices, and the fact that my family, people I had trusted most, hadn't once seen me for who I really was. And in that moment, a strange clarity washed over me. Something had to change, because I couldn't survive like this forever. But I had no idea where to even start. After that night, I couldn't go back to pretending everything was fine. I started thinking about what my life could be without constant guilt and manipulation. I pored over my finances, calculated how much I could save each month, and researched apartments and homes I could afford. Every calculation, every plan, felt like a small rebellion, a step toward reclaiming myself. Friends encouraged me quietly, sensing the shift in my energy. You deserve your own life, one said. Their words gave me courage I hadn't realized I'd lost. The hardest part was guilt. Cutting ties, even mentally, felt wrong. I kept replaying memories of all the times I'd helped my family, wondering if I was betraying them by wanting something for myself. But deep down, I knew this wasn't betrayal, it was survival. For the first time, I felt like my happiness mattered. I started envisioning moving into a place I could call my own, decorating it, controlling it, and most importantly, not being invisible. Even as I began taking concrete steps, opening new savings accounts, looking at real estate listings, I kept it secret. If Emma or my parents found out too soon, it could all unravel. The house I dreamed of became my obsession, a symbol of freedom and validation. But every day, the pressure of hiding it, of planning in secret, weighed on me like a second job. And yet, I couldn't stop. Because deep down, I knew this was my only chance. My only real shot at life without being used, without being ignored, without being invisible. And I didn't know if I could wait any longer. Weeks turned into months, and the planning became real. I got pre-approval for a mortgage and started visiting apartments. The smell of fresh paint, the echo of empty rooms, it felt intoxicating. For the first time in years, I imagined waking up to a space that was mine. But Emma caught wind of it somehow. One evening, she smirked as she asked, "So, saving up for your own little place, huh? Thought you were too busy paying for everything else." I froze, her words cutting sharper than I expected. Did she know more than she should? My heart raced, but I forced a calm smile. "Yeah, just thinking about the future," I said. Her casual mockery stung, but instead of stopping, it fueled me. I realized she couldn't touch what I was building quietly, secretly. Each viewing, each signed paper, each deposit became a defiant victory. My parents, blissfully unaware, continued their favoritism, giving me the illusion of normalcy while I quietly constructed my escape. The first night alone in my new apartment, I breathed deeply, savoring the hum of independence. I was free, yet tense, because I knew one wrong step, and Emma or my parents could try to pull me back. I finally confronted my parents about my savings. "Why did you take it without asking me?" I asked, voice steady but trembling underneath. Mom tried the same old line, "We know what's best for the family." Dad added, "Emma needs it more than you ever did." I realized then that arguing with them would change nothing. The anger inside me was both terrifying and clarifying. I was done begging for recognition. I saw the truth: no matter how much I gave, they would never see me as equal. The confrontation left a scar, but it also lit a fire. For the first time, I felt fully justified in planning my life without them. Signing the papers felt surreal. The smell of the new place, the echo of my own footsteps, it was freedom. I looked at the walls, the empty rooms, imagining the life I'd create. Every brick, every window, every key was proof that I had survived years of being undervalued. Emma tried to downplay it later, saying, "It's just a house, not like it's yours yet." But I didn't care. This was my victory, tangible and real. I finally had a space I could call mine. With the house secured, I started putting distance between myself and my family. I answered calls less, set boundaries, and refused to let their guilt trips work. Emma tried to insert herself, but I was firm. Friends noticed the shift, they said I looked lighter, freer. The more I detached, the more empowered I felt. Finally, I was choosing myself without apology. With the house secured, I started putting distance between myself and my family. I answered calls less, set boundaries, and refused to let their guilt trips work. Emma tried to insert herself, but I was firm. Friends noticed the shift, they said I looked lighter, freer. The more I detached, the more empowered I felt. Finally, I was choosing myself without apology. With the house finally mine, I realized that physical distance wasn't enough, I needed emotional distance too. Every time my phone buzzed with a text from mom or dad, I felt the old weight pressing down. The guilt, the obligation, the constant pressure to be the responsible one, it was all still there, waiting. I decided, quietly but firmly, that I wouldn't let it control me anymore. I started setting boundaries. I didn't answer every call, I didn't rush to fix problems that weren't mine, and I politely refused Emma's attempts to insert herself into my life. "I have my own responsibilities now," I told her once, trying to sound calm while my heart pounded. She scoffed, obviously annoyed, but I didn't back down. Each time I held my ground, it felt like a small victory. Friends noticed the change immediately. "You look lighter," one said. "Like you're finally breathing." And they were right. I was finally letting myself exist without constantly worrying about pleasing everyone else. I could make decisions without fearing their judgment, without feeling guilty for wanting a life that was just mine. The more I distanced myself, the more empowered I felt. I realized that the years of invisible labor, the sacrifices, the favoritism, it had all built me, but only now could I use it for myself. I felt a clarity I hadn't known existed, like a fog lifting. Even mundane moments became symbols of my freedom: cooking dinner without consulting anyone, rearranging furniture to my liking, staying up late just because I wanted to. I was learning that self-respect and personal happiness weren't selfish, they were necessary. And for the first time in years, I wasn't exhausted by family drama or invisible obligations. I could breathe, plan, and live my life on my own terms. But I knew this was just the beginning. The final confrontation with my past, my parents, and Emma was still looming somewhere, and I had to be ready when it came. I spent hours sitting in my new living room, staring at the walls, the empty corners, the sunlight streaming through the windows, and I finally felt peace. After years of sacrifice, after being invisible while Emma was celebrated for the bare minimum, I had built something that was truly mine. Every late night, every extra shift, every unpaid bill I had quietly shouldered had led to this. It wasn't just a house, it was freedom. For the first time, I realized that my loyalty had been both my strength and my weakness. I had given so much, expecting nothing in return, hoping that my family would see me. But they hadn't. And that was their choice. I wasn't angry anymore, I was free. Mom and Dad eventually reached out, sending texts, asking if we could talk, hoping for reconciliation. Part of me wanted to respond, wanted to explain why years of their favoritism had hurt me, wanted to make them understand. But I didn't. I had learned that some lessons are only for me to internalize, not for them to validate. Emma tried the usual jabs: "You think you're better than us now?" But I didn't react. Their opinions no longer held power over me. I walked through the house, touching the freshly painted walls, smelling the faint scent of new carpet, listening to the quiet hum of my appliances, and I smiled. For the first time, I felt like my life was fully mine. I could decorate, live, and exist without being judged, compared, or dismissed. The shadows of favoritism and neglect no longer followed me here. I whispered to myself, almost inaudibly, I never looked back. And I meant it. This was my life now, built with patience, resilience, and self-respect. The family I had once bent over backward for might always be part of my past, but they wouldn't touch my future. I had finally reclaimed myself, and nothing could take that away. The sense of empowerment, of finally standing on my own, settled over me like a warm, steady weight. I was whole, I was free, and for the first time in my life, I was truly, unapologetically happy.